You know that feeling when you see that creepy poster? I mean, the one for Poltergeist. You know what I mean, right?
Yeah.
That little girl, the static, gives me chills just thinking about it.
Oh, absolutely. It's iconic. A total classic.
Yeah, and for good reason. But here's the thing. Get this. You guys sent in some seriously interesting stuff about the real-life story, the haunting, that supposedly inspired the movie.
Oh, yeah.
And let me tell you, it is so much more than just like your typical haunted house stuff.
Yeah.
This is deep.
Yeah, this one really digs deep. And it makes you think, you know?
It really does. So are you ready to dive in?
Oh, I'm totally ready. Let's do it.
Okay, great. So what we're looking at here is the 1958 Seaford Poltergeist case.
Huh.
Like, what if I told you it's not your average ghost story, right? And the big question we're going to try to answer is, was this really like a kid with superpowers? Was it a big, elaborate hoax? Or was it something else entirely?
The million-dollar question for sure.
Right. All right, so set the scene for us. 1958, Long Island. What was it about this case that makes it stand out from all the other spooky stories out there?
Okay, so picture this, right? We're talking like classic haunted house setup. So we have the Herman family, totally normal family, right? Moves into this new home.
Yeah.
And, weird stuff starts happening. But what makes this one different? Like you said, what makes it stand out? The sheer volume of events. And they documented everything.
Right.
Meticulously documented by the police. I mean, we're not just talking like noises and creaking doors. This is full-on poltergeist activity.
Oh, wow. Okay, so what are we talking? Like dishes flying around?
You name it. Bottles of bleach just exploding, ink flying across the room.
No way.
Oh, yeah. And it gets weirder.
Okay.
Holy water emptying itself.
Oh, come on.
I know, right?
So it's like the movies, but in real life.
Even creepier. And get this, it wasn't just, like the middle of the night.
Right.
This was happening in broad daylight with people watching.
Okay, now that's what I'm talking about. That's the kind of detail that like makes my ears perk up. Multiple witnesses. It's not just like, he said, she said. We're talking cops, neighbors, even like scientists, right? They called in scientists to check this out.
Well, the police were stumped, right?
Yeah.
I mean, imagine you're a cop, you get a call, right? And it's for like a possessed bottle of bleach.
I wouldn't know what to do.
Exactly. So they're looking at 67 incidents. 67. Logged by the Nassau County Police.
Wow.
And these weren't, rookies. We're talking seasoned officers. Even the chief of police himself, he got involved.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, can you imagine the pressure to find like a real explanation?
Yeah, when the top guy's involved, you got to figure it out.
You know it. It was a big deal.
All right, so we've got this family, right? They're dealing with like rogue condiments and stuff.
Yeah.
The police, they're completely baffled. And then you said they bring in Duke University, like an actual university.
Oh, yeah. Duke University's parapsychology lab. This is the big leagues. They sent not one, but two researchers.
They sent two people to check this out.
They were invested. And this being the 50s, you got to remember, right? This is like peak Cold War. People were fascinated by, ESP and all that stuff.
Right. Like, could this kid be a weapon?
Exactly. It was a different time.
Totally. So, okay, we've got like exploding holy water, baffled cops, scientists on the scene. What did Duke University make of all this? Did they just throw up their hands and say, yep, it's a ghost?
You'd think, right?
Right.
But get this. These guys were thorough. I mean, they weren't there to just like mess around with Ouija boards or whatever.
Yeah.
They wanted a real explanation, a scientific one. So they looked into everything.
Everything. Like what? Give me an example.
Okay, get this. Radio waves, faulty wiring.
Sure.
Even like fluctuations in air pressure. They tested for everything.
Air pressure. Come on. You're messing with me.
I'm serious. These guys wanted to be absolutely sure they weren't missing anything. That's what makes this case so fascinating. They were so thorough, and even with all that, some of the stuff they just couldn't explain.
I can see why you're hooked on this.
Yeah.
So what was their final verdict? They actually came up with an explanation.
They did. They called it recurrent spontaneous psychokinesis, or RSPK. Basically, their theory was that young James Jr., the son, he was the epicenter of all this weirdness.
Hold on. Are we talking about telekinesis here? Like he's moving stuff with his mind.
Well, sort of.
This is like Stranger Things stuff.
Right, but the researchers, they didn't think he was doing it on purpose, like consciously controlling things.
Oh, okay.
Their theory was more like he was subconsciously causing these disturbances.
Subconsciously, so how do you even...
Exactly, it's tricky. But they thought maybe it was like some untapped potential or even trauma, maybe?
Trauma?
I mean, think about it. His dad, a WII vet. Could be some, underlying anxieties in the family. Right, stuff bubbling to the surface.
Wow, that's heavy. So it's not just that things were moving, it's what those objects might have meant to this kid.
Exactly. They noticed a lot of the incidents involved things his mom used a lot, like cleaning supplies, religious things. They thought maybe there was a psychological link there.
Oh, wow. See, that's both fascinating and kind of sad. This poor kid,
Tell me about it.
suddenly he's like a science experiment.
Yeah.
How did the family handle all this?
It's interesting you ask. There are stories, right, about them being overwhelmed, which makes sense. But there's this other thing.
What's that?
The researchers wanted to do more tests, right?
Yeah.
Even suggested lie detector tests. And the family, they said no.
Ooh, okay. Yeah, that's going to raise some eyebrows. Refusing a lie detector makes you wonder.
Oh, it definitely fueled the skeptics.
I bet.
One of the most vocal was this guy, Milburn Christopher, a magician, and a famous one, too. He said a lot of what happened could be explained with, stage magic, tricks, illusions, that kind of thing. He even showed how some of it, like the bottles popping, could be faked.
So are we saying it was all a hoax? The whole thing?
Oh, that's a million-dollar question, isn't it? Even Christopher, Mr. Skeptic himself, he admitted that some of the details just don't add up.
Really? Like what?
For instance, the police, they dusted stuff with that fluorescent powder to see if it was being touched.
Oh, right, like in the movies.
Exactly. None of the objects that moved ever had any powder on them. Nobody touched them.
Oh, wow. Okay, so not so easy to explain that one away.
Exactly. Real life, right. Stranger than fiction sometimes.
Okay, but here's the thing that gets me. We're talking about a movie, right?
Right.
Like, it's a story, a made-up version of a story that was already pretty wild. How much of it was, like, actually taken from real life?
It's funny you should mention that because there's this whole other layer to this thing, right? Where the real Seaford case and then the movie, they kind of, like, bleed into each other.
What do you mean?
Well, for example, you know that scene with the swimming pool?
Oh, yeah. Creepy.
So the rumor is they used real skeletons.
Wait, seriously? Like they dug up a bunch of skeletons just for the movie?
That's the story. I know. It's hard to believe, right?
That's crazy.
I know. And Jo Beth Williams?
The mom in the movie?
Yeah, she's even hinted at it in interviews.
No way. So it could be true.
Who knows? But it goes to show you, right, like how these stories, they take on a life of their own. Suddenly it's not just a movie anymore.
Yeah, it's true. And then there's the whole poltergeist curse thing. I mean, isn't there like a rumor about every horror movie being cursed? But I gotta admit, even I've heard the stories about poltergeist. And some of them are pretty creepy.
Oh, for sure. It's a rabbit hole. But like the fascinating one, we're talking about like cast members, crew members, they're having these strange, sometimes really awful things happen to them during filming, but also after.
Oh, really? Like what? Give me an example.
Okay, so Richard Lawson, he played Ryan.
Okay, yeah.
So he's booked on this flight, right? And at the last minute, he gets bumped up to first class. The flight he was supposed to be on, it crashed.
Oh my God. Are you serious? That's awful.
I know. It gives me chills every time. Coincidence? Maybe. But still.
I'd be freaked out.
Right. And then there's Dominique Dunn.
The daughter.
Yeah, Dana. Tragic story. She was killed by her boyfriend.
Oh, that's right. I'd forgotten about that.
Awful, right. And it happened not long after the movie came out, so of course people connected the two.
Yeah, it makes sense. It's like when something that awful happens, it's almost easier to believe it's because of a curse,
I get it. It's like we need an explanation.
Right, exactly.
These stories, they give us that, even if they aren't true.
Right. Even if it's just a way for us to make sense of things we don't understand.
Exactly.
So where does that leave us? I mean, what are we supposed to think about all of this? Was the Seaford poltergeist real? Was it all just a big hoax? What do you think?
Honestly, I think that's the beauty of it, We don't know. There's no, definitive answer, no proof. It's all just pieces, right? Conflicting stories, weird coincidences. It's up to you to decide what you believe.
That's true. I like that. It reminds me of what we always say. A good story isn't about the answers, it's about the questions. Makes you think,
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Well, there you have it, folks. The Seaford poltergeist. Was it real? Was it fake? Was it something else entirely? We may never know for sure. But one thing's for sure. It's a story that continues to fascinate and haunt us, even all these years later. So the next time you watch Poltergeist and you hear that static or you feel a chill run down your spine, just remember, sometimes the scariest things are the ones we can't explain. Until next time.